So, hi once again. Welcome to Reality and You Foundation. As an initiative in the pandemic, today we are bringing to you the topic on careers and opportunities pre, post, and during the pandemic. In some countries, we've seen lockdowns opened up. In some countries, we've seen lockdowns coming a third time. Today, we have with us Ms. Tripti Singh. She's an educational psychologist. And she has been in this field for the last 14 years. So Tripti, thank you for joining us. And can you give us a little bit information about yourself and what are the cases that you're handling currently?
Yes, thanks for having me, Shraddha. It's a pleasure to work with such a nice foundation, Reality and You. I also first want to start off by thanking you for running this initiative for students, right? Because I think the students, the largest population in growing and developing economies like India, but still mostly ignored, right?
Yes.
Everybody wants to talk about the new trends in education and what should students do next, but nobody really talks about their mental health and what they are feeling.
Right.
So this is a great initiative to be a part of. I have been working with students for 14 plus years now. I started off in a college talking to girls about their educational journeys, their life journeys, and doing life skill training with them. I moved into the space of now further education, talking to young adults about their journey ahead vis-a-vis education and what their professional growth is going to look like. And I couldn't think of a better time, honestly, to be having this conversation with you. We are so-called in the post-COVID era, but I don't know whether it is still post-COVID or not. And I'm ready to answer any question that you may have for me today.
So Tripti, I'm going to dive into talking about some of the concerns that I've been having from some of the youth patients that have been coming to me. So there has been a lot of chaos among the youth. We've seen universities, colleges shut in India for more than a year now. There is no hope of them opening because the cases in India are at their peak again. It's been very difficult for students who have passed on their 10th and 12th last year. They enrolled in online programs, some of them in Indian universities, some of them in abroad universities, but they've all been studying from their homes. So the experience of the university has been lost. Second that I want to bring up is, for the students who are currently going to pass, what should be their strategy? Is it going to still be an online platform for them?
Okay, so taking this question in two parts. First off, it was really sad, Shraddha, when COVID happened and we saw Indian universities and colleges struggle to understand what it meant for their students and their faculty. The Western universities were far better prepared because they had already started running online modules, like from 5-7 years. Maybe not everybody was offering like a proper degree online, but people were definitely doing more modules online. So the platforms were ready. They were digitally aware, they were digitally ready and relevant. Right. Indian universities, like it always happens in India, policy is bang on, but implementation is zero. Universities have been running and colleges have been running on very old age thought processes and intellectualisms and not been able to stay relevant. And COVID was the stark nakedness of that. They took so much time to kind of get on board, understand, okay, what platforms are we going to engage with, or how are we going to invest this money, how are we going to teach us faculty how to teach online, right? A teacher running the same curriculum that she could in the class suddenly realized she's getting zero eye contact when she's doing it online.
Right.
And it was really sad to see that happen, especially at the higher education level. When we talk about what can we expect from this going forward, I think now in 2021, we've reached a place where people are now comfortable with the format. Right. And the emotional void that was there, like I don't know how to react to this format, has now been taken care of, where they're like, okay, this is life now and I got to get used to it. So the relevance is building fast, rapidly. There is a steep learning curve among educational institutions. There are certain private colleges that have really taken a learning from this and have put everything online. Now you can get your transcripts online. Yes. You can now ask for recommendations online. You can now finally actually fill up a form that will not get hung and submit it online. So this is a good awakening, and honestly, it's here to last, because if colleges in India are going to think that they're going to go back to the normal, that's not going to happen. This is going to be the future of India, not in its entireness, but definitely a lot of it is going to stay back.
So in terms of, you know, a lot of, courses, whether it is related to science, the application courses, what should students expect? There were earlier, we have scientific laboratories, in MBBS and other fields, even where you say architecture or fashion designing, we have a lot of assignment based. I think the assignments are still there, but the concreteness of it is lost.
Right.
So, what in choosing careers, what would be your suggestion to students if the pandemic is going to take a year and a half more to settle?
All right. So here are a couple of things to bear in mind when choosing technical courses which would need in-person interaction and it's not currently available. The first thing to see if the university or the college you're committing to is able to give you a lab simulation, right? Now, even when we studied psychology, I did, or when you did in your college, there were certain experimental processes that we needed in-person interaction for.
Right.
But thanks to AI, we've actually been able to see a very rapid increase in doing lab simulations across sectors, right? When you speak about architecture, when you speak about physiotherapy, when you speak about even the medical field, for a very large extent, there are modules and models available through AI that are actually being used online. And students are being made, and they are being made available to students, and students are being made aware of them, so they can actually leverage it. What would be an ideal scenario is that at the beginning of an academic year, the university gives, like they give you textbooks, etc. They give you simulation models for home use, and then you're able to do that in a virtual lab with your professor. But when students are looking at doing some of these pure science and experimental science based programs, I think it's absolutely fine to commit to them still. Just make sure that your university or the college you're committing to is actually ready for that kind of engagement for their students. That's very critical.
So a stimulation lab. What else would be
simulation labs, actually? Yeah. So labs that can create that kind of an environment for you virtually.
Right. That's a very good point. What else can we look for in terms of fashion designing, architecture, other, short, maybe, of course, we have the labs for the scientific experiments, but what about, other fields?
So I think what's happened with courses like architecture and designing, etc., is that they are also now really looking and seeking more softwares and more digital intervention in their curriculums to be able to leverage that for students. Look, at the end of the day, when you've got to design something, pen and paper works great, but students more and more, and in fact, this was something, Shraddha, that started about 4 to 5 years ago at prestigious design schools in India, where they started really upping the level of software engagement of the students. So now when you see students from a design school, whether it's architecture or design or NIFT or any of those places, Shrishti for that matter, you'll see in the resume, there is an actually very robust section of software engagements that the student has. And the students I meet from the design backgrounds are very comfortable with those software languages and programs. And I think that's the way to go ahead.
Okay, so what do you think in terms of careers? What impact has it have for the forthcoming students of the 10th standard, going to university, or 12th standard students, in terms of their majors? What are the effective careers that they can look at? Because they are finding it very hard to balance. I know some of them have started their courses and are not enjoying them because of maybe the lack of stimulation or the stimulation labs or the technology that is lacking in the courses. So in those terms, are there particular universities, like you said, who have done a great job through the pandemic?
Right. So let's break this down a little bit. When we look at, say, a student wanting to do literature, right, or history under a BA umbrella, whether it's at St. Stephen's in Delhi, or if it's at Mumbai University, or if it's at Christ in Bangalore, wherever it may be, you have to know one thing, that a lot of the learnings that were done in the classroom are age old. The way the teacher would just put something on the board or stand there and talk to you about it. Yes. These teachers are now trying to make it a little more interactive, make it a little more engaging. It may not happen 100%, right? But the fact is that if you are someone who wants to engage in a subject that is more theoretical in nature, the idea is to seek out institutions, to seek out universities or maybe faculty And this will only happen through word of mouth. When you speak to alumni from those places who've been there in the last 1 year, 1.5 year, to see how much the faculty has really learned from
Right.
how to present themselves digitally, and then get into a program that will probably give you more project work, probably will give you a little more research work, so that you can actually engage with your subject area individually, especially at the college level, versus just sitting on a Zoom call and listening to your teacher.
Right.
So it's important to look out for those things. Another thing that I definitely do want to mention here, if you are a social science student, so that's a BA, wanting to do BA, or liberal arts, or even if you're looking at BCom or BBA or BMM,
Right.
it doesn't really matter anymore what you're studying. What I think students out there must understand is that tech is going to be there in every sector, in every industry, in every field going forth, right? And COVID has made that very clear to us, that tech literacy is very, digital literacy is another thing, but you've got to be tech literate, right? So not to shy away from building certain language skills or building certain soft skills that you can actually use in your resume to get that job opportunity, to get that internship, to be more relevant for this future.
Okay.
It's very important to do that. And also, tech does not mean mathematics. I think I just want to put that out there.
Right. So, in terms of technology, what are the short-term courses that students can take while their courses are on right now, while their school is on, or they have a summer break? Maybe, are there any courses that you can recommend to us?
Absolutely. So I think that for any student who comes from a non-tech background, you can start off with learning some coding languages, and you can start. And honestly, if you're going to a Coursera or an edX or any of these Upgrad and any of these online virtual platforms, it's okay. And but you don't have to do the certification. What you need to do is do the intro program, whether it's HTML or C++ or Java, whatever languages you want to start with or whatever coding you want to start with. You start that on the intro level, see if it sticks, see if you like it, take it to the next level, take it another level, and then start using those skills. There's no point in having 7 certifications on your resume which you have never used,
Right.
especially towards your interest area. So it's important to then start working on projects, important to start thinking of ways where you can engage those skills for
Right.
yourself, in your interest, outside your interest, and then put that on your resume.
So, Tripti, what about, the examinations? Like last year, we saw a lot of examinations being cancelled, right from your SATs to your GMATs to some of the entrance exams, even in India,
Right.
whether they were your CA exams, for example, were postponed indefinitely to December. So, what are we looking at this year? What do you look like at this year? Because we are back in the peak of the pandemic.
Right.
Of course, we've shifted to an online platform, but I do know these exams, some of them were based physically. So,
Right.
how does a student prepare for their medical entrance or for a CA entrance?
Uh, so here's the thing. When we talk about entrance exams, I think there are 2 aspects to it. One is the coaching of the exam, especially in India, and one is the actual exam. Now, the actual exam, please always remember, is only regulated by a central body, right? And if the central body decides that it's going to be physical for whatever their policies are, there's nothing you can do about it. But what you need to be aware about is how are you as a learner, right? Are you enjoying the online learning platform? Are you liking the fact that you might have to engage with your professor one-on-one? Because let me tell you, Shraddha, there are a lot of students who are thriving in that environment. They are accepting their reality, and they're realizing that, you know what, it cuts away the anxiety of having to perform in front of competitors.
Right.
And those people will enjoy coaching online. They'll enjoy the one-on-one interaction or a small 5 people group Zoom class where they're learning the GMAT or they're learning for the CET or the CAT or the CAT or whatever. Now, when we speak about the fact that once you're aware you're a learner and you realize that, well, this doesn't work for me, I need that large classroom engagement, I need that one-on-one interaction, which means that I may not appear for the exam this year, and I may want to take a gap here in that sense for that entrance exam, continue working where I'm working, or continue studying one more year, or continue doing research for another year with my faculty, and then possibly do the exam the year later when a lot more people are vaccinated in the country, and then the exam will in fact happen in person. It's okay. It's all right if you're 22 and giving the exam, and it's also okay if you're 24 and giving the exam. You don't have to be hard up to yourself because of the style of learner that you are. It's not it, it's not anybody's fault that the policy says it has to be in person, but you're not comfortable going there in person. In which case, that's fine. Don't
Right.
give it for a year. Find other productive engagements and then prepare for it the following year.
And do you think exams like SATs, are they going to come back? Are universities, or we see them totally sidelined forever? Because this is a different time. There was a lot of importance to SAT given over the decades. Top schools always wanted higher scores. What are we seeing them now? It is the second year of COVID. We've seen students traveling abroad, coming back, being accepted to various universities. So what are we seeing today?
I'm going to be super honest. Okay. SAT2 subject tests have been eliminated completely.
Right.
A whole lot of universities gave SAT waivers this year, which basically meant that if you are in a situation where you're unable to give the SAT because maybe you're in a remote part of India and there was no online engagement there, right? Or your internet provider was down with COVID and there was no internet in your community, in your town, whatever. So you were not able to give it. It's fine. Explain it to us and we'll allow you to apply without an SAT. But if you were in Bombay, in Delhi, in Bangalore, and online SAT was available, online GRE was available, there is no viable reason for you to not have done it. Right.
Okay.
Now, having said this, there has been a lot of hullabaloo about colleges being test optional, or if you're an IB kid, you don't really necessarily need the SAT. But it is optional. It does not mean that it is not recommended. Universities over the years, over so many years, Shraddha, have given so much importance to standardized testing.
Yes.
It's going to be very hard for them to take it away immediately. And because as Southeast Asians, I'm not just talking about India, I'm talking about all of Southeast Asia, we are extremely herd mentality based, right? And we want to showcase excellent data again and again to beat the competition. There are going to be children who are going to be doing those exams and they're going to be getting the good grades. In which case, if you are somebody who had the capability but chose not to give it, the admission officers are going to wonder why you didn't choose to give it there.
Okay, so giving SATs would be a healthier option, would be something that would upscale you in terms of application. Is that what you're saying? If you have the option, give it?
Absolutely. Strategically speaking, if you want to give yourself a better shot at a better college for yourself, then give the SAT and prepare for it and give it.
Okay.
Or the ACT, whichever works for you.
Yeah, and the ACT, right? And in terms of in terms of careers, we spoke about, like you said, technology is something that we cannot shy away anymore. What are some of the things that have really sprung up post last year, I would say?
Great question. I worked with so many students this year for the masters and the undergrad level. And believe me, Shraddha, students who want to also study music, or students who want to study architecture, or there were students who wanted to study social sustainability projects, all wanted tech in their curriculum, right? So some of the emerging sectors over the last few years have been renewable energy, sustainability, social entrepreneurship. There's been a lot of emphasis on doing integrated design or human-computer interaction. But every student who gets an admit is most excited about the admit that has a little element of tech in that program. And this is not just students who are applying to the United States for the STEM designation. These are students who are applying to Europe or applying to Australia, or they're applying to the United Kingdom or Singapore. But they're enjoying the fact that their course will really get them job ready for the next few years of their life.
And I just want to bring about this whole, course on game designing, so I've been hearing a lot on game designing and, courses in game designing. So I'm not sure if we have many in India. Have you seen any substantial game designing courses in India?
No. Typically in India, what we offer game designing is as a vocational course. So there'll be a diploma or a certification program. Which, in my opinion, is not rigorous enough to prepare you for a competitive role in the industry, which basically means that if you want to make good money as a game designer, you need to go to a program which is 3 years of game designing or a master's in design, thinking, design technology, which will prepare you to be a subject matter expert in that. And that's when big companies are going to come and want to recruit you from that campus versus a diploma in game design.
Okay, so since we don't have any degree courses yet in India, what would be some of the avenues that students can look at abroad?
Right. So when you're looking at something which is game design, and that's really specific, but let's just talk about design technology per se, right? Ideally, what you would do is you would get into a college, if it's in the UK or in Europe, then you will do design for 3 years. right? And this will be design which has elements of technology in their curriculum, where
Right.
you will be exposed to various facets of design, allowed to think as a designer, but in a very structured and in a market ready fashion. You will
Right.
be taught how to structure your thinking and your creativity in a way where it is presentable and sellable. If you're in the US or in Canada, then you will pretty much do it in the liberal arts umbrella, but you would be doing your core subjects in your module. So you study a little bit of economics or history or creative writing or English, but at the same time, you will do a major in design, which will allow you to, again, be a design tech person, but within a structured environment of how you have to think, how you have to present yourself, and how you have to make your idea more sellable. And then from there, you could do a master's in visual arts, you can do a master's in design thinking, you can do, the world is your oyster.
And there have been, of course, we've seen the whole social media boom happening through COVID, so I think a lot of careers coming out of this, so being an influencer, being a YouTuber, making apps, something people are looking at as their formative careers. So in India, do we have any formal based, or even abroad probably, do we have any formal curriculums for these, or is it going to be students who just pick this up as a passion project?
Um, I think it's great that you're doing it as a passion project, especially if you're a high schooler or young in college. But it's important that if you really think of doing it for the rest, or for a part of your life, you need to understand it a little better and a little deeper. So Shraddha, when we speak about people doing well, or because we like, for example, I heard this funny thing where people said in Bombay, every one street has 5 influencers. Right? So not every influencer gets that 1 million followers, right?
Right.
So the point here is that if you want to be that unique person, you need to have a very high sense of awareness about what you have to offer to this space. Right? And that awareness comes from disciplined education, from structured education, from being exposed to various facets and areas and interests that allow you to know where you fit into this space and what is your opinion, and then why is your opinion so important, right? And when you understand all of that, is when you're going to be able to do a good job of it, right? So if you want to be an influencer and you want to be a social media expert, by all means go ahead and do it, but work on your writing skills, work on your content creation, understand camera angles, understand what your reader or your listener wants to know about that opinion that you have, and when you are in a structured fashion developing that skill and working on upskilling, that's when you'll be able to really stand out and get those 1 million, 2 million, 3 million followers.
Right. So in terms of skills, right, you mentioned a lot of skills in terms of photography, and what are some of the skills that we are going to see, who are going to gain this high importance post-COVID? Of course, mental health is something that I think very, very important right now. Psychology has taken a leap all over the world, and something as significant as that. What are some of the other skills that you're looking at?
So the one good thing that came out of COVID, and I couldn't agree with you more, is on mental health awareness. Everybody suddenly had the time to think about their mental health, right? And that's fantastic for people like you and me who've been talking about it for so many years and telling students to calm down and be aware and invest in themselves versus just running a rat race. So over and above this, it's also been a time to kind of introspect. Our society has started introspecting. People have started asking questions of each other, and sustainability has become a very important issue for a lot of young people. Things like, how can I create an impact? How can I create a social impact, but not do it for free? Just working for an NGO is not good enough. I'm independent. I want to be able to sustain myself. So then can I still be a social impact creator while making good money out of it, right? So these are some of the careers that actually, over and above tech and mental health, are really getting an impetus now, where there is a human element to what the student wants to study, and that impact in society that they wish to create, that they want to create now internally.
Right. So I think more than, like what you're saying, is more than just following certain patterns of career which we were following before, whether it was electronics or medical fields. I think it is more on what I can contribute back to the planet.
Absolutely. And I think that's also where recruiters are heading now. I mean, if you see, when we all went digital and every work was happening online, suddenly soft skills became very important. Are you presenting yourself well to the client? Do you have the right etiquette? Are you integral enough to switch on your camera and not lie to your supervisor about the fact that you were not logged in, or you were logged in, or whatever? And suddenly those human skills, or the soft skills like we call them within management, have become very important. Right? People who used to, Shraddha, take flights to do meetings, to make a sale or to negotiate a deal, who thought life would not work unless they got that flight and went morning Bangalore, came back in the evening, and the next morning got into a flight in Delhi, are suddenly being able to make those $1 million deals online.
Right.
Right.
So in terms of marketing and other careers such as management, what are your options there today?
So the options are in marketing, with social media and digital literacy becoming really big, is definitely one option that has emerged much more predominantly. But I think in terms of management has started integrating a lot of tech, and tech literacy and tech understanding, and that has done well for B schools, right? Where people were thinking, is MBA redundant? A few months ago, people were like, oh, does an MBA really matter? An MBA, before people could find an answer to that, the MBA had already revitalized itself and said, well, we offer tech courses, we offer business analytics, we offer STEM certifications,
right.
We allow you to do a coding workshop while you're doing management. Because while you're a great leader, it's important to also understand who you're leading, and you're leading tech teams, predominantly, right? Another great boom has been entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
Whether it's the startup bubble or what it is, I don't know, but people are suddenly going back to the 60s and 70s of India and saying, can I do something and make money on my terms for myself and my family and my community? And
right.
and entrepreneurship is definitely growing rapidly as well.
Right. So in terms of entrepreneurship, I've seen a lot of people starting small home kitchens, the cloud kitchens as they are talking about. I mean, that would be for the youth, who wanted to explore creative skills. Are there any formal courses in terms of catering? Because that again becomes a very difficult line to learn on Zoom.
Right. No, it absolutely does. And I think culinary schools as well, like design schools, have turned to AI and have turned to interactive modules of classrooms to be able to teach those skills, right? But it's always going to be a little hard. It's always going to be a little hard, Shraddha, because these are very one-on-one kind of interaction courses. But slowly but surely, I think they're working on it. And I think even when you talk about these kitchens, etc., I think what especially some of the Western schools, culinary schools, they're doing it really smartly. So they're breaking people up into really small batches and maintaining social distance. Right. Suddenly the kitchen can accommodate 20 students, has only 5 students in that class. So they're doing the right things at the right time, but still allowing that experience for students who are coming in on campus and doing that.
But repeat, I've had some students who've sort of gone last year, come back because of the lockdowns in the UK, and it's been extremely lonely, extremely saddened. They've had to come down here, reform the entire schedules, going online all night, waking up late in the mornings. They don't know whether to go back to their colleges or not, to the university. Right. How is second year going to look like? Are we going to graduate in this way? So there's a lot of disappointment among students.
There is, and sadly that's been like and that's not only just ended that year; it continues this year with students who's now just getting admitted. Yes. They don't know whether they should go in August or not. I have one thing to say though, that there definitely is sunshine across the rainbow, because, and true to what the world thinks about India, we've been very benevolent and we've been giving out vaccines all over to the world. But the Western world has been a little bit like, no, let's protect us first. Right. So in that ethos, a lot of universities over the last 2 weeks have announced that by April, the entire student body is going to be vaccinated on campus. The entire faculty body, student body. Yesterday, a university, in fact, announced it as well. Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame, that by the end of July, everybody on campus is going to be vaccinated, and they struck deals.
Is that an initiative by the universities? Once the student gets an application, once the student arrives to the university, then they are getting vaccinated on a mandatory basis.
Yes. So what happened was, a lot of students who were online of last year, as of January, February, did end up going on campus for the spring semester. Right. And they've been doing a lot of the modules online from their dorm rooms or wherever they've been living. But 1 or 2 modules in a social isolated classes have been put out there. And I think this is something we discussed the last time when we spoke as well over a call, that universities are going to have these thermal check places on campus, and they're going to have social distancing, and they've actually gone ahead and done that. So there are a lot of cohort already there. But now the same universities, when they're giving out the admit letters, are actually encouraging students to get onto a web call and ask their questions about COVID. And if you go to a university website, every website opens with a claimer saying there are latest COVID updates here. And they're talking about that. They're saying when you come on in August, if you're not been vaccinated yet, you come with a nucleic acid negative test, and we are going to vaccinate you here. And the ones who are already there are all getting vaccinated. And universities have taken it upon themselves to kind of reassure the society and the community that they belong here, they are our family, and we're definitely going to go all out.
That's fantastic news, Tripti. So can you just, for the viewers, give us some detailed information of which countries would do that?
So as of now, universities in the United States and some universities, fewer though, in the United Kingdom have definitely announced this. Australia is right now sitting on the fence because they are just not opening their borders until July 30th. Yep. And New Zealand as well. They're, within their bubble, they are absolutely COVID free. But right now, they're not ready to welcome other students. They are handing out admits for July, but they're telling students that expect your first semester to probably be online, and the next semester onwards, you'll be able to come on campus. But the United States and the United Kingdom have started putting it out there that we are definitely going to get you guys vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated by the time you come on campus, you'll be on campus and get vaccinated.
How about Canada? I want a question on Canada because I see a lot of students, going towards Canada as well.
Yes. Canadian universities have yet not put out any official notices about what their vaccination policies are. From what I've heard from students who are already there is a lot of social distancing happening. And pretty much all of last year and the beginning of this year was completely online. So even if though you were on the campus of Toronto or UBC University, you were still in your dorm doing online virtual classes. And there were labs that were working, but in social isolated manners. So there were certain lab modules that were being done in person. Having said that, Canada has over the years, because I know a lot of Indian students love to apply to Canada, I want to put it out there. Canada has gotten a little more strict about their visa policies. And they're becoming a little more discerning about it. So students cannot just look at it as an easy migration door that they tend to think that they can. You have to be at a good university. You have to be at par to get into that good university to be able to go for that interview.
So in terms of, now switching back to India, in terms of Indian universities, because there have been a lot of fear among the population. Most people want to just study in their country right now because of the uncertainty in the environment. Maybe their, family has not coped well, or there has been a death or, a sickness in their family. So most students have also opted off, giving up their dreams of traveling abroad and, just doing their foundation courses in India. What are the universities in India that have easily sort of, switched to the online mode?
From an admission perspective, I think they're still struggling, Shraddha, to be honest. But from a lecture giving perspective, from the feedback that I have got, a lot of the autonomous colleges in India, in Bombay especially, are doing a really good job of it.
Can you give us some names, if you don't mind?
Sure. So St. Xavier's, my students were very happy with the way they've been doing the online engagements. I heard students from NMIMS speak highly of the engagement, and they use a very predominant network. They use Microsoft Teams for their virtual classes. So students are getting homework downloads and uploads on Microsoft Teams. They're being able to message each other. They're able to simulate classroom conversations. So all of that is happening on Teams, and they're running it quite well. Some of the private liberal arts colleges are doing a phenomenal job. Ashoka, Kriya, Flame University. They were honestly very quick to jump on that digital wagon and say, okay, you know what, this is what we need to do and this is what we're going to do it. And this goes to talk a little bit about the state universities versus private universities, which is something we're going to see in the next 5 years as the next trend in India. The liberal arts colleges for undergraduation is definitely the next big boom that India needs to look forward to.
So in terms of liberal arts, are you looking at social sciences? Are you looking at literature? Are you looking at economics? What are the curriculum?
No. So the curriculum, Shraddha, is not the way Mumbai University would typically do liberal arts, which is the social sciences. This is exactly the way the United States does the liberal arts. So basically you get it declaring a major, and your major could be music to design to computer science to finance to economics to entrepreneurship. There are no more columns anymore, right?
Okay.
So you go into the website, you see what majors they're offering, what minors they're offering, and you make a pitch for a major, or you could also sometimes go undecided. You can just say, I haven't decided yet. Once you get picked, and the selection process is also quite rigorous right now. It's the SAT, your predicted grades from your school. You have to give the essays, you have to submit your form by a deadline. There will be an interview, and then you are selected or not. So they are really looking at curating a very diverse and excellent holistic class. Then what happens is you go in the year one, you do all the core modules that you have to. So there will be
Right.
a bit of science, there will be a little bit of mathematics, a little bit of history, a little bit of second language, all the core modules. At the end of the day, end of the year, you confirm whether you're going to continue with your major. And then the next 2 years, you're doing your major minor combination or double major combination, or one major with some other electives on the side, because you just want to study design thinking and you're just going to go ahead and do it while you're doing a finance program. And then you graduate as a major in whatever subject that could be. There are 0 columns anymore in liberal arts in India.
So I think this is a very important point for parents as well, because a lot of parents in the past have been very routine to think of the BA, the BCom, and and BA of course was not well thought of. It was more the science and the BScs. So in terms of parents, what is your advice to parents, or what is your suggestion to parents? How do they reform the entire, because this education system has suddenly started reforming. It's been a very difficult journey for parents to absorb.
Right. So I have 2 or 3 pointers that I would love to share with the parents who are going to listen in. One is that don't try and fit your young high schooler in a box.
Right.
14, 15, 16 is very early to know what I want to do for my life. Right. So one must be okay with your child not knowing exactly what I want to do, and also okay to just let your child become a little more aware of who his strengths, what his strengths and interests are. That's it. He or she just needs to know what are my strengths, what are my interests. From there on, anything you want to study, if it is not engineering per se or medical per se, you can do it under the liberal arts umbrella. Like I said, liberal arts colleges are offering computer science majors, finance majors, entrepreneurship majors, design majors, music minors, psychology, economics, anything that you want to study under the sun is offered under the liberal arts umbrella. It's not a technical style of education, but it's a fantastic education. And your child who's studying a theoretical subject like history would not study it lesser at a liberal arts college than he would at a Sophia's or a Xavier's or an LSR or wherever else they study. So it's important to know that. Remember, if your child is average at mathematics to very good at mathematics to exceptionally bad at mathematics, the idea is explain to your child how engaging with core subjects is critical for the way their brain develops. Right. So math, 1 pure science, 1 social science, 1 second language, English for sure. If your child has the option of keeping all of these alive, try and keep it alive in their high school curriculum. And by high school, I mean 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes. A lot of parents sometimes feel, my child is going to study psychology, so maths and science drop kar dete. But that's not the right way. If your child is being able to cope, does not have a reason to drop mathematics, even if he or she is not doing that well in it, it's fine. Let her work towards it, because in college, there will be math. You can do math at a higher level and at a regular level or at a basic level, but there must be math for the way the brain needs to develop in terms of logical thinking and critical thinking. So it's important to let them know that don't box your child. Liberal arts is a great option for your child.
So, Tripti, I'm just going to stop you here by asking you, in terms of careers such as public relations. We've seen that UN, the WHO body is becoming very, very strong. So, in terms of PR, HR companies, HR heads are given a lot of importance in the pandemic. These careers have sort of come in the forefront. There has been I would say media, journalism, there has been a lot of respect to these careers suddenly. And so would liberal arts as a course help these careers as well?
Absolutely. So within the liberal arts umbrella, Shraddha, you would study international relations, you would study human resources, you would study communications if you wanted to. The electives are unlimited. And you can pick a combination. You could do a major in finance and a minor in public relations or communications and become an influencer who talks about how the generation Z needs to do the next investments.
Right.
And that's a fab way to do it.
Right. And in terms of, the banking sector or, the niche careers or, electronics or engineering, because like I said, parents have preset notions that, maybe liberal arts is not a good enough, or those options are for people who don't have their careers preset.
Yeah. So there is this new university that's come into India called Palaksh University. Now, Palaksh is offering engineering degrees with the liberal arts umbrella.
Wow.
So typically, like if you would go to Stanford University, or if you go to Harvard, or if you go to any university in North America, you would study your core subjects while you're also doing your engineering subjects.
Right.
The same way at Palaksh, you will do your liberal arts while you're doing engineering as well. There is another university in the north of Delhi, in the north of India, called Bennett,
Yes.
which also has elements of engineering within the liberal arts curriculum.
Okay.
Christ has music as a part while you're also studying pure economics. So I think the biggest myth buster here is that arts does not mean social science.
Right.
In the word arts, it does not mean social science.
Okay. And what about what happens to the people who are struggling? Of course, they want to get into the IITs, and what are are we then opening up a horizon and looking for more options today? In terms of MBA as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, see, Shraddha, there are two Indias that you and I are talking to right now. There's an India that's aware, that's exposed, that has seen their child struggle through COVID and
Right.
realize, you know what, mental health is far more important than him or her
Right.
getting into an IIT or an NIT.
Right.
Then there is an India that is still looking at the rat and saying, I'm going to follow the rat, right? And it's important for us to let them know that if your child is going to play to his or her strength, right, he or she is going to be motivated every morning to get up and perform and be their best. And that's what gets them a job, and that's what gets them job satisfaction, and that's what gives them sound mental health at the end of the day.
And I
So it's
think
important.
that's fantastic, Tripti, because this thing that you said is the internal motivation to keep the drive on, because your careers are not something that you generally opt out of. And we've seen huge transformation in people over the last year, changing their careers, getting frustrated, getting depressed, getting burnt out. So I think this point is very important, to get in touch with yourself, to see what your strengths are. Dipti, I just want to lastly, what are some of the risks that students can take? What are some of the things that they can do to upscale their resumes, to put up that strong point that they are probably, because I always keep hearing that, maybe we are not good enough. Maybe there are so many applications, and, so that constant feeling of not good enough is leading to a lot of depression and anxiety.
Sure. I think there are two key areas to work on, Shraddha. One is for these young, soon going to be adults, to work on their life skills. So learn a lot of life skills. Build time management, scheduling management, build executive functioning skills, be disciplined, be structured in your approach to things. That is going to take you a long way, regardless of which career you're going to end up in. And that will also reduce a lot of anxiety in the way you present yourself, because the confidence that comes from being a good manager of self is tremendous. And the second key thing is, don't try and collect certification. Do things outside your curriculum and then engage in those things, right? So we teach our children to, like, come home, do your homework, and you're good, versus saying, well, ideally if you've learned enough in school, then the homework should be a slipshod thing. And then what are you going to do if you love Lego and just building Lego is not good enough, right?
Right.
Saying that you love Lego is not just putting the pieces and parents spending money on the Lego.
Right.
Doing Lego then means, then what else can you do construction with? How are you approaching construction? Are you doing a project with it? Are you doing a research paper on construction? Are you going to 20 architectural sites, standing outside and making notes on what you liked about that construction? Are you speaking to a labor guy there saying, आपको कितना मेहनत लगता है ये बनाने में? आप कहाँ से इतना दूर क्यों आए? आपका क्या motivation? आप रोज ऊपर चढ़ते हैं? That's you telling me I love construction. I built Lego as a kid, and that's why I want to be an engineer. Not you loving construction or mechanical engineering or civil engineering. So it's important for students to understand that they need to engage with their subject area by doing more things in that subject area for themselves, not because the school asks them to or college asks them to.
Right.
That will set the resume apart. That will give them the confidence to speak at an interview about things that are beyond the resume. Because the resume tells me what school you went to, what your grades were, what your internships were. Tell me things that you did outside of that, within your subject area, that you just are amazed at yourself with.
Okay. And, Tripti, lastly, I want to point out, because we've seen a lot of countries like, for example, Dubai, where schools started off physically, and again, the cases, went up and they shut down. And somehow there is a medium where students are given that option of whether they want to today go back to the physical school or the online. Similarly, I am assuming universities all over the world are going to have this kind of protocol. So how do you see education reform? You said it's going to change and this is here to stay. What are we looking at long term?
From a school perspective, Shraddha, I think schools are going to have to ideally give out options to parents saying hybrid model, smaller classroom, socially distanced classroom, regular temperature checks, regular checks on students' movement, regular check on parental movement. If the parent is traveling from out of town, the child cannot come to school for 14 days. Let the child stay at home and see whether there are symptoms. But also giving the other parents an option, saying, well, if your child or you are completely uncomfortable coming to school, here is a virtual platform that is available on a big screen behind me at all times when the class is going on, whether there's a child logged in or not, right? And for the teacher to know that that's happening right there, so that when they're talking to the students, they're also looking at the camera and saying, did you understand? Right? So that, I think for school, it's very important to allow parents that space to choose that option. For colleges, what's really going to happen is that the lab modules are definitely going to be in person, and that's the only way to go about it. But they would also be offering certain modules online where the students don't need to come. An ideal situation would be make it a lot more project based.
Right. And what about postgraduate students? What are we looking at postgraduate courses?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about in terms of college and graduate school, where students are not just marked on the final exam per se, but there's a lot of marking or your performance otherwise that is also taken into consideration. So were you interactive enough in the class? Did you collaborate well on that project that you were assigned? Did you submit a research paper and submit it on time? And then there is 25% for the examination, for example. So holistically, a child or a student is being evaluated versus just that one final year exam, where the student is also then kind of rewarded for engaging in classroom interactions. So even if it's on Zoom, keep your camera on, engage with your friend, answer a question, ask a question. So then you're being graded for that. So the student knows that, okay, I got to do what I got to do.
Okay. So Tripti, since we know, and for everybody who are seeing this episode, Tripti has moved to Shanghai lately. So you have a global perspective in some sense. Again, putting it out there, what does a strong resume need?
Okay. A strong resume needs two things. One, you need to show me your passion and in your interest. You cannot just tell me it's there, right? Yes. No university is going to ask you to submit certificates. That's not happening. So you need to show it to me with project work or research work or getting your hands dirty, basically. The second thing that you need to do is keep your grades up. Remember, whether it's the US and they say grades don't matter, yes, to a very large extent they don't, because they're only one piece of the puzzle, but they're still that one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
So keeping your grades up progressively, not just putting that last minute effort in third year or in grade 12 and saying 11 se kya farak padta hai, second year se kya farak padta hai, because it showcases your level of engagement, it showcases your maturity, it showcases whether you really mean it, that you want to come to my university and you will study here. So it's important to do this.
And this is the time where children are engaging in writing their SOPs or statement of purpose. And this is a very personal, it's supposed to be a very personal paragraph on why are you taking and what meaning are you attaching to your career. So what are your suggestions on that?
There are two ways, Shraddha, that we approach an SOP, right? Depending on which country you're applying to, it could either be a personal statement or it could be a statement of purpose. Right. Now, when we talk about a statement of purpose, it's more about a statement of awarenesses, statement of who am I, what are my realizations, and what do I really bring on campus, and then what are my motivations to choose you or this program per se. When we talk about a personal statement is indirect your journey through examples of your engagement with your subject area.
Right.
So there are two very distinct essays, and one is more about the self and your awareness about the self, while the other is a lot about your engagements and explaining those engagements with your subject.
Right. Okay, Tripti, any last minute thoughts of, how coping with universities, applications, deadlines keep shifting because of COVID scenarios in different countries? Is there an approach that you've seen that has worked in the last couple of months with your students?
So this is where executive functioning skills really come in, Shraddha. Whether it's a high schooler or a college student looking at a master's or a PhD, it's important to be organized. It's important to start early, and it's important to stay on top of deadlines. So constantly tracking the universities, subscribing to their newsletter or following them on LinkedIn, so you know what has changed, what are the deadlines. Maintaining an Excel sheet. If you don't know Excel, learn Excel. Put it all down there. Make sure that you're on top of it. Make sure that you give yourself regular time every week to engage with your application work. Is very, very important. But I definitely do have a word of advice to put out there to students who are currently studying, whether they're applying or whether they're not applying, Shraddha, I think it's very important from a mental health standpoint to let them know that they must be kind to themselves,
Right.
right? I know there's a big race out there. I know everybody wants to be the next Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, uh, you just have to be the next big you, right?
Right.
And only you can love yourself the way you can love yourself. Nobody else can. So it's important to be kind and invest in self-love as much as you can, to be able to see through these troubling times, because this is not the last of it. This is one COVID. We're going to have a gazillion other COVIDs in our life on a personal level, right?
Right.
It's important to keep that insight and love yourself.
I think I'm just going to end it by saying, while you choose to love yourself, and it's a choice that you make rather than running the rat race, I think it's also important to find yourself. So while you are, applying to various universities, seeing their criterias and seeing the competition, it's very important to touch base with, who am I? What do I want to do in my life? So
Yes.
don't lose yourself in this rat race. And thank you so much, Sipti, for joining us. Thank you for insights. Thank you for your time. We're going to put down your email ID and all your details on our site. You guys can contact her for further advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shraddha, for having me. It's been a great evening talking to you.
Thanks.